Hey besties, welcome to Afro Love Diaries, the place where love crosses borders and emotions feel real. Get your popcorn ready because today's story will melt your heart.
He fired her in front of everyone just because she corrected him. But what he didn't know was that he just lost the only woman who could handle him. If confidence had a face, it was Diane Makona. And there was something about Diane Makona that made people turn twice. Maybe it was her radiant confidence, that fearless South African fire that lit every room she entered. Or maybe it was the way she stood tall in a world where everyone else bowed to power. She wasn't just another employee at KBC Group. She was their business strategist, sharp-minded, stylish, and stubbornly honest. And her biggest headache? Her boss, Minho, the youngest and most brilliant CEO in Seoul, also known as Mr. Perfectionist with no chill. For 6 months they had been clashing like thunder and lightning. He said one thing, she argued another. He liked control. She liked the truth. It was chaos, beautiful, intelligent chaos. That morning the tension finally snapped. The boardroom was packed with senior executives and investors. Minho was presenting his new expansion strategy for Southeast Asia. Confident, composed, and proud as always. Everyone nodded along politely, pretending to understand his numbers. Everyone except Diane. She sat at the far end of the table, pen tapping softly against her notepad, lips pursed. And then she spoke. "Sir," she said calmly, "if we follow this plan, our market entry will fail within the first quarter. You're assuming customer retention before brand trust. It's a rookie mistake." The room went still. Half the board stared at her in horror. The other half secretly admired her courage. Minho turned slowly, eyes sharp. "A rookie mistake," he repeated, voice dangerously low. "Yes," Diane replied, folding her arms. "Numbers are important, but customers aren't robots. If you want results, maybe listen to the people who actually study behavior, not just balance sheets." Her tone wasn't rude, just honest. But honesty and Minho's ego had never been friends. He froze for a second, jaw tightening. Then with a cold smile he said, "Diane, if you think you can run this company better than me, maybe you should start your own." "Maybe I will," she shot back. Gasps. A few pins dropped. Ji-woo, his loyal assistant, tried to cough away the tension. Minho slammed his folder shut. "You're fired." Silence. Absolute silence. Diane blinked, clearly surprised, but instead of begging she simply stood up, smoothed her blazer and smiled. "All right then. I'll pack my things. But don't worry, sir. When I open my own company, I'll make sure to hire you." The room nearly exploded. Someone choked on their coffee. Minho's ears turned red. His pride dented in front of his entire board. "Out. Now," he said through clenched teeth. She grabbed her files, walked out gracefully, and never looked back. That evening, Minho sat alone in his office, replaying her words over and over. He'd expected her to return, to apologize, to call. But Diane never did. She didn't send a message. She didn't even collect her final paycheck. She simply disappeared. And for the first time in his life, Minho felt replaced. "She'll come back," he muttered confidently. "She always argues, but she respects me." The office had never been this quiet. Minho sat behind his sleek glass desk, tapping his pen for the 10th time that morning. Normally by now Diane, his bold business strategist from South Africa, would have already burst into his office with her usual fearless energy, saying something outrageous like, "Sir, if you want to impress investors, maybe don't sound like a robot reading a spreadsheet." But today's silence. He frowned at the empty chair across from his desk. It felt strangely personal, like the room itself missed her voice. His assistant Ji-woo cautiously entered the office, holding a stack of files. "Sir, should I post the vacancy for the strategist position?" "No," Minho snapped too quickly. Ji-woo blinked. "Oh, okay." Minho adjusted his tie, pretending to focus on a document, but his eyes didn't move. He could still hear Diane's confident tone in his head, the way she challenged him without fear. She was the only one in the company who dared to correct him. And the worst part? She was usually right. By noon, everything started falling apart. The pitch presentation Diane had been preparing for their biggest client was in chaos. The slides looked like something an intern made in a hurry. Who approved this disaster? Minho barked, slamming his palm on the table. Sir. Diane usually handles that section. One of the staff mumbled. That name again. It stung more than he wanted to admit. Minho sighed, loosening his tie. The office suddenly felt hollow. Hours later, he found himself staring at his reflection in the office window, the city lights flickering behind him. Why hasn't she called to apologize? He muttered under his breath. He had imagined she'd come running back, maybe with teary eyes begging for her job. But Diane? She was probably laughing somewhere, completely unbothered. And that irritated him, yet deep down he admired it. A small smile crept onto his lips. That woman really has no fear, he said softly, shaking his head. What he didn't know was that just across the street, Diane was sitting at a cozy cafe, sipping iced coffee with her best friend. He thought I'd cry, she said with a playful smirk. Let him miss me small. Her laugh carried through the cafe, bright and carefree, the exact sound Kong Minho didn't know he was longing to hear again. A week passed. Then two. By the third week he saw her name on a rival company's website, smiling beside their new CEO in a business photo. That was the moment Minho realized he hadn't fired her out of anger. He had fired her because he was falling for her, and didn't know how to handle it. 3 weeks gone and Diane had moved on, or at least she told herself she had. She now worked with a rival consulting firm that had been dying to hire her. Her new office was buzzing, her ideas were being respected, and her laughter filled every corner. Little did she know, fate was about to pull a prank. The annual Global Business Innovation Summit was packed with investors, CEOs, and strategists from across Seoul. Cameras flashed, glasses clinked, and ambitious smiles filled the room. Diane, dressed in a sleek emerald green jumpsuit and gold earrings, walked confidently across the grand hall, holding her tablet. Heads turned. She looked radiant, powerful, and unbothered. And across the room, Kong Minho froze mid-sentence. There she was, the woman who haunted his thoughts every morning since that argument. Ji-woo, he whispered. Sir. Is that Diane? Ji-woo followed his gaze and coughed lightly. Yes, sir. The same Diane you fired because she corrected you during the board meeting. Minho glared at him. You don't have to remind me, Ji-woo. Meanwhile, Diane was busy networking, until she turned and saw him. Their eyes met. The same man who thought she'd come crawling back was now staring like a man seeing a ghost. Her friend whispered, Oh, your ex-boss just spotted you. Let him choke on his ego, Diane muttered, lifting her glass of champagne. When they finally bumped into each other near the stage, the air thickened. Miss Diane, Minho greeted stiffly, his voice calm but his heart racing. Mr. Kong, she replied with a teasing smile. Did you finally learn how to listen to your staff? Ji-woo nearly choked behind them. I see you found a new company, Minho said, forcing a small smile. Oh yes, Diane replied brightly. They actually like hearing ideas that make money. I see, he muttered, jaw tightening, not from anger but admiration. She excused herself gracefully, leaving him standing there, half embarrassed and half impressed. For the first time, Kong Minho realized something painful but true. He hadn't fired a troublemaker. He'd fired the one person who made his company, and his life more alive. As Diane walked away, he couldn't help but smirk. Game on, he whispered under his breath. 2 days after the summit, Kong Minho still couldn't stop thinking about Diane. Her voice, her confidence, that smirk that said, I told you so. He sat at his desk pretending to focus on quarterly reports, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. Sir, Ji-woo said softly, walking in with a tablet. Your coffee. Leave it, Minho murmured, eyes still glued to the screen. Also, there's something you might want to see. Ji-woo placed a glossy magazine on the table, Business Korea Weekly, the headline screaming in bold, Afro-Asia Partnership. Rising star strategist Diane K. joins forces with global tycoon Park Tae-hoon. Minho froze. He slowly picked up the magazine and stared at the photo. There she was, Diane, glowing, standing beside a tall, confident Korean businessman in an expensive gray suit. They were shaking hands, both smiling like partners in success. Maybe more. His jaw tightened. Tae-hoon, he muttered. That guy invests in everything from hotels to fashion. Ji-woo nodded carefully. Yes, sir. They say he's offering her a permanent position as his lead strategist. Minho's fingers clenched slightly around the magazine. A quiet pause filled the room. Interesting, he finally said, trying to sound calm. But the calm didn't reach his eyes. He turned toward the window, gazing at the Seoul skyline. That woman. She'd not only moved on, she was shining brighter than ever. And worst of all, he realized he wasn't just proud of her. He was jealous. That evening, he sat alone in his penthouse, flipping through the magazine again. Every photo of her smiling beside that man hit a nerve. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Why does it bother me this much? He muttered. Then in a low voice, almost like a challenge to himself, he whispered, Fine, Diane. You win this round. But I'm not done yet. He closed the magazine and smiled faintly, that dangerous CEO smirk returning. The next morning, Minho gave his assistant a new order. Find out what project she's working on with Park Tae-hoon. Ji-woo blinked. Sir, are you trying to? Just do it, Minho interrupted with a sly grin. Let's see how she handles working with me again. The game had officially begun. Minho had always been a man who never looked back, but ever since that morning, he couldn't get Diane's face off the cover of that magazine. Her radiant smile beside Park Tae-hoon burned deeper than he cared to admit. Every news site was praising her new consulting partnership. And worse? The article described her as the woman with a fearless mind and a rare gift for strategy. That used to be his praise for her. At 2 a.m. he was still in his office staring at his computer. His assistant, Ji-woo, peeked through the door, hesitant. Sir, are you still not going home? Minho didn't even look up. Get me the proposal for the Park Tae-hoon project. We're joining the bid. Ji-woo blinked, confused. But sir, that's not even our. Do it, Minho interrupted coldly, eyes fixed on the glowing screen. For the first time his motivation wasn't profit, it was pride, and something deeper he refused to name. 2 weeks later the day arrived. The business conference hall buzzed with media and executives. Cameras flashed, voices echoed. And then she walked in. Diane, elegant in a cream blazer and fitted black dress, her curls bouncing lightly as she moved. The crowd parted slightly as she approached the main table, confident and unbothered. Minho's jaw tightened. She noticed him almost immediately. Their eyes met, a flicker of recognition, then cold distance. Well, she said softly, stopping beside him. I didn't know the mighty CEO of KBC Group had time for small partnerships. He smirked, though his heartbeat betrayed him. I came to support innovation. Didn't know you were leading it. Oh, I lead a lot of things now, she replied, her tone calm but sharp enough to cut. Every word from her lips made him realize how much he'd lost, and how deeply he wanted to fix it. When the meeting started, she presented with poise, her slides crisp, her arguments flawless. Minho barely heard a thing. His focus was entirely on her voice, her gestures, the spark in her eyes. As the applause echoed, he leaned closer and whispered, Diane, let's talk. Privately. She gave a faint, amused smile. About business? About mistakes, he said quietly, his gaze softening. But she turned away before his heart could say more. For the first time in his career, Minho realized, power meant nothing if she wasn't beside him. Minho had never been so distracted in his life. Every time he tried to focus on work, Diane's voice echoed in his head, that sharp confidence, the way she challenged him without fear. So when Ji-woo walked into his office with the day's agenda, Minho suddenly said, Set up a meeting with Diane Masiko. Ji-woo blinked. Sir, didn't you fire her? Minho shot him a look. This is business. Strictly business. Ji-woo muttered under his breath. Right? Business that makes you stare at her picture every night. Minho glared, and Ji-woo instantly straightened up. I'll make the calls, sir. 2 days later, Diane walked into KBC Group's boardroom like she owned the place. She looked flawless, navy blue pantsuit, her curls neatly styled, and that same fearless energy that used to drive him crazy. Mr. Kong, she said coolly, sitting across from him, your assistant said you needed strategic consultation. On what exactly? Minho cleared his throat, pretending to shuffle documents. Ah yes, we're planning to expand into the South African market, and your expertise could be valuable. Her eyebrow arched. Interesting. And you only realized that after firing me? Jiwoo coughed nervously, trying not to laugh from the corner. Minho ignored him. That was a misunderstanding. I value competence. And you're competent. Diane smirked. You mean brutally honest. The same reason you couldn't stand me before. He shifted in his seat, struggling to keep his composure. I've learned to appreciate brutal honesty. The tension was thick and painfully obvious. Every time she spoke, he found himself smiling, even when she was teasing him. So, she said after a pause, you want a full market entry plan or just an excuse to talk? Jiwoo's pen froze midair. Minho blinked. Excuse me. She leaned slightly forward, that mischievous spark in her eyes. Because if this is another one of your ego-driven games, I'm billing you double. He exhaled, pretending to be offended. You think I don't take business seriously? Oh, I know you take control seriously, she shot back. But not every meeting is about control, Mr. Kong. And for the first time in a long while, Kong Minho laughed genuinely. Something about her presence melted the walls he built around himself. He didn't want the meeting to end, but Diane stood and began packing her laptop. Thank you for the opportunity, she said calmly. I'll send my proposal. No emotions, just business. But as she walked out, Minho's smile faded. Because deep down he knew it was never just business. 3 days. That's how long it had been since Diane walked out of his office. And since then, Kong Minho had checked his phone more than a teenager waiting for a text. Every morning he told himself, it's fine. It's just business. Every afternoon, he found himself scrolling through her social media like a stalker. So when Jiwoo walked in and said casually, Sir, there's a networking gala tonight. The guest list includes Diane Masiko. Minho nearly spilled his coffee. Cancel everything, he ordered immediately. Jiwoo blinked. But sir, the dinner with the investors. I said cancel. Jiwoo sighed. You know, sir, there's a difference between a merger and obsession. Minho glared. Then consider it a strategic pursuit. That evening the gala glittered with Seoul's elite. Crystal chandeliers, soft jazz, clinking glasses. Everything elegant and expensive. And then she appeared. Diane. In a red off-shoulder gown that demanded attention. Her curls cascaded down one side, her confidence radiant enough to silence the room. Minho froze mid-sentence. The investors talking to him noticed his distraction and followed his gaze. Isn't that the strategist from the magazine? One whispered. He didn't answer. He was already walking toward her. She spotted him halfway across the room, and that small, knowing smile curved her lips. Well, she said when he reached her. If it isn't my favorite former boss. Following me now. He straightened his tie, pretending to be composed. Coincidence. Pure coincidence. She raised an eyebrow. Really? So it's just chance that you're at an event you never attend. Jiwoo, who had been dragged along as his plus one, nearly choked on his drink. Minho cleared his throat. I came to network. Of course, she said, sipping her wine. And I came to work on my tan in a ballroom. He laughed quietly. You're still impossible. And you're still pretending not to miss me in office. The words hit harder than he expected. For a moment the crowd faded. Just him, her, and the unspoken tension in the air. He finally said softly, maybe I didn't fire you because you challenged me. Maybe I fired you because you made me feel something I didn't understand. Her eyes softened. But before she could reply, someone called her name. Park Tae-hoon, the same man from the magazine, approached with 2 glasses of champagne. Diane, shall we? He said politely, glancing briefly at Minho. Diane gave a polite nod. Excuse me, Mr. Kong. Business calls. And with that she walked away, leaving Kong Minho standing in the middle of the gala, heart pounding and pride finally cracking. Kong Minho stood there like a statue, still holding the empty wine glass Diane had just handed back to him. For a moment the world seemed to pause. Then reality hit him like a slap. She had walked away. Again. Jiwoo quietly stepped beside him. Sir, you okay? Minho didn't respond. His eyes followed Diane across the room. She was laughing. Laughing so freely beside Park Tae-hoon, her hand gently brushing his arm as they talked. The sound of her laughter reached him like an arrow straight through his ego. She's laughing, he muttered. Jiwoo blinked. Yes, sir. People do that sometimes. No, Jiwoo. She's laughing with him. Jiwoo sighed. Tragic. Minho glared. You think this is funny? Sir, I think you're jealous, Jiwoo said with a grin. Which honestly is kind of a plot twist. You used to fire people for breathing too loud. Minho turned back to the crowd muttering. She used to laugh like that in my office. Actually, sir, she laughed at you, not with you, Jiwoo added helpfully. Minho shot him a death stare. Then, as if his pride couldn't take it anymore, he suddenly straightened his jacket. That's it. I'm getting her back. Jiwoo nearly choked on his drink. Now? Here. Sir, you can't just march across the room and... But it was too late. Minho was already walking, or rather strutting, toward Diane and Park Tae-hoon with the fake calmness of a man pretending not to be losing his mind. Minho stopped beside them, plastering on his most charming smile. Mr. Park, he said, shaking Tae-hoon's hand a little too firmly. Didn't expect to see you here. Tae-hoon smiled politely. Oh, I'm just catching up with Diane. We're discussing a possible partnership. Ah, business, Minho replied, forcing a grin. My favorite topic. Diane's eyes sparkled with mischief. Oh, really? I thought your favorite topic was firing people. Jiwoo, watching from across the room, quietly face-bombed. Actually, Minho said, glancing at her, I've developed new interests lately. Tae-hoon looked between them, sensing tension. Well, Diane, I'll catch up with you later. As soon as he walked away, Minho leaned closer and whispered, I see your new business partner finds you hilarious. She smirked. Well, someone has to appreciate my humor, Mr. Kong. He smiled faintly. Don't get too comfortable, Diane. You haven't seen the last of me. Good, she teased, sipping her wine. It's been boring without your dramatic exits. And as she walked off once again, Jiwoo appeared behind him, whispering, Sir, should I prepare your next coincidence? Minho glared but couldn't help smiling. Yes, make it perfect. The next morning at the office, Kong Minho sat in his chair, still haunted by the image of Diane laughing with Park Tae-hoon. His pride couldn't take it. His heart. Even worse. He slammed his pen on the desk. Jiwoo, get me flowers. No. Get me every flower shop in Seoul. Jiwoo blinked, adjusting his glasses. Sir, are we declaring war or proposing to the entire city? Minho glared. Just do it. And make sure Diane sees them. Within hours, Diane's desk was buried under a mountain of roses. Red, pink, even blue ones. Her co-workers stared, whispering like schoolchildren. Diane, completely unfazed, lifted a single rose and said sweetly, Please tell your boss my allergies are as dramatic as his ego. Jiwoo almost burst out laughing when he relayed the message. Minho, however, stood up abruptly. Fine. If flowers don't melt her heart, dinner will. That evening he reserved the entire Rooftop restaurant, decorated it with fairy lights and waited, only to realize she was having a casual dinner with Park Tae-hoon again. Minho's jaw tightened. For days, Kong Minho became a walking definition of man in crisis. Every attempt to win Diane back had ended in humiliation. The flowers? Rejected. The rooftop dinner? Cancelled. His accidental run-ins at her favorite cafe? She didn't even blink. Jiwoo, ever the voice of reason, finally said, Sir, maybe you should apologize like a normal human? Minho frowned. Jiwoo, I don't do normal. I do grand gestures. But deep down, even he was starting to panic. Every time he saw Diane smile on social media, whether at charity galas or conferences, his heart twisted with a strange mix of pride and jealousy. Then one Monday morning, fate decided to give him a second chance. At the Seoul Global Business Summit, Minho sat at the head of the table, half listening to presentations until a slide caught his eye. African-Asia Business Expansion Project. And there she was, Diane, glowing in a bold yellow power suit, confidence radiating from every gesture, as she presented her strategy on cross-continental marketing. The entire room was captivated, including him. Minho leaned forward, whispering to Jiwoo, Get me on that project. I don't care what it takes. Jiwoo raised an eyebrow. So, this is business or heartbreak management? Both, Minho replied, straightening his tie. This time, she won't be able to ignore me. When the partnership announcement came, Diane almost dropped her coffee. Wait, Kang Minho? As in that Kang Minho? Her assistant nodded carefully. Yes, ma'am. The board approved it this morning. You'll both be co-leading the African-Asia project. Diane took a long deep breath, the kind that said, Lord, not today. Meanwhile, in another corner of Seoul, Minho was grinning like a man who had just won the lottery. Jiwoo, did you hear that? She can't avoid me anymore. Sir, that sounds less like business and more like a rom-com setup. Exactly, Minho said proudly, straightening his tie. And I plan to play the lead role. Their first meeting in the joint project office was a mix of tension and comedy. Diane sat at the conference table, her tablet in hand, eyes focused on her presentation slides. Minho walked in confidently, flashing his CEO smile, the one that usually melted investors. Miss Diane, he greeted smoothly. Looks like destiny has a sense of humor. Without even glancing at him, she replied, If this is destiny, I'd like to speak to the manager. Everyone in the room laughed, except Minho, who blinked momentarily disarmed. As the meeting went on, Diane dominated every discussion. Her sharp strategies and calm confidence made Minho's chest tighten with both admiration and regret. Every time she spoke, he leaned forward just a little, captivated. But she never once looked his way. When the meeting ended, he followed her to the elevator. Diane, can we talk? About business or your ego? She asked, stepping in. Both, he said softly, the elevator doors closing between them. Minho smiled faintly. She wasn't making it easy, but he wasn't giving up. For the first time in his life, Kang Minho wasn't trying to win. He was trying to deserve her. From the first day they started working together, it was chaos, beautiful, entertaining chaos. Diane handled every meeting like a queen commanding her empire. Her strategies were bold, her delivery smooth, and her patience, tested by one man only. We should target Seoul's fashion district first, she said firmly during the morning briefing. No, Minho countered instantly. We start in Busan. Bigger ports, faster results. She folded her arms, giving him that look, calm but deadly. You said that last time and we almost lost a major investor. The room went quiet. Jiwoo pretended to choke on his coffee just to break the tension. Diane continued smoothly. If this partnership is going to work, Mr. Kang, you'll have to learn how to listen. Minho smirked. And if you're going to challenge me, Miss Diane, you'll have to learn how to lose. Everyone froze. Then she smiled, that slow, confident smile that made his heart skip a beat. Oh, I never lose. That evening, as the rest of the team left, Minho noticed Diane still working at her desk, her face lit by her laptop screen. For a long moment he just stood there in silence, watching her. The way she bit her pen when thinking, how focused she was, how effortlessly she carried herself. He finally spoke softly, breaking the quiet. You're still here. Some of us actually work, Mr. Kang. And some of us can't stop thinking about work, he replied with a teasing tone that made her glance up. Their eyes met just for a second, but it felt longer than it should have. Then she shut her laptop, stood up, and said with a playful smirk, Good night, boss. When she walked past him, Minho exhaled, shaking his head. He was doomed, and he knew it. Working together was supposed to be professional, but Kang Minho didn't understand that word anymore. Every day he showed up with something new. First it was coffee, then flowers, then a limited edition designer pen for her strategy notes. Mr. Kang, Diane said one morning, eyeing the gift bag on her desk, is there a reason my workspace now looks like a birthday party? Minho smiled smoothly. Consider it appreciation for your contribution. Appreciation or distraction? She shot back, arching an eyebrow. Jiwoo coughed from the corner. Sir, at this point, you're closer to Santa Claus than a CEO. The whole office laughed. Even Diane tried to hide her smile. The next day, Minho showed up again, this time with a silk scarf. You left your neck uncovered yesterday. It's cold outside, he said softly. Diane crossed her arms, suppressing a laugh. And what happens tomorrow? A reindeer and a gift box. Only if it gets me forgiven, he teased. But she turned away, pretending to focus on her laptop. Mr. Kang, if buying gifts fixed mistakes, the world would be perfect. That one hit him harder than he expected. For a moment Minho just stood there, watching her with a mix of regret and admiration. Later that evening Jiwoo found him in his office, staring at the city lights. "Sir, maybe she doesn't want presents. Maybe she wants sincerity." Minho nodded slowly, the playful spark in his eyes dimming into something deeper. "Then I'll give her that, but first I need to earn it." And for the first time the man who had everything realized love wasn't something he could buy. The next morning the entire office buzzed with an unfamiliar calm. Kang Minho, the man who once barked orders like a drill sergeant, sat quietly in the conference room. No flashy gifts, no grand gestures, just his sharp suit and a focused expression. Diane entered the room with her laptop, expecting another chaotic debate. Her long black hair was tied neatly behind her, her face composed yet wary. She had grown used to him interrupting her mid-sentence, twisting her ideas into his own. But this time he didn't. She began presenting slides on the African-Asia Partnership Project, explaining strategies and market potentials. Every time she paused, Minho nodded, his eyes never leaving her. When she made a bold suggestion about community-driven brand engagement, he actually took notes. For a brief moment she lost her rhythm. Was he listening? "Please go on," he said softly, his tone unusually calm. Jiwoo glanced at him in shock. The staff exchanged looks. This was a new Kang Minho. By the end of the meeting he simply said, "Excellent insight, Miss Diane. Let's proceed with your approach." The room went silent. Even Diane blinked, unsure if she'd heard correctly. As the team left she lingered behind. "Are you feeling all right, Mr. Kang?" she teased. He chuckled faintly. "Maybe I'm just learning the power of listening. From someone stubborn enough to teach me." She smiled for the first time in days, shaking her head. "You're impossible." But deep inside something shifted. For the first time she saw humility in his eyes, genuine and unforced. And for Kang Minho that quiet smile was worth more than all the gifts money could buy. The African-Asia project meetings continued for weeks, and somehow Kang Minho had become different. No shouting. No arrogance. No stubborn interruptions. Instead he'd quietly pull Diane's chair before meetings, hold doors open, and sometimes even bring her favorite matcha latte without saying a word. First Diane thought it was some kind of corporate trap. "What's he up to this time?" she whispered to Jiwoo during lunch. Jiwoo smirked. "Maybe our boss finally fell in love, with your business ideas of course." She rolled her eyes. "Oh please." But later that day she caught Kang Minho at the office pantry, staring at his phone like a teenager. She peeked over his shoulder and saw her profile photo from a business award page. He froze. "Diane, I was just checking something about the project." She folded her arms, grinning. Sure, Mr. Kang. The project looks a lot like my LinkedIn photo." He coughed awkwardly, straightened his tie, and escaped like a guilty schoolboy. Jiwoo, who saw the whole thing, was laughing so hard he nearly dropped his coffee. But that night, as Diane walked home through the city lights, her thoughts betrayed her. She smiled, thinking about his clumsy excuses, his quiet efforts, his soft eyes when he listened. "Don't even think about it, Diane," she muttered to herself. "You can't fall for that man again." Yet the next morning, when she entered the office and saw him already waiting with her favorite coffee and a nervous smile, her heart skipped just once. And she knew she was in trouble. The long days of planning the African-Asia project had turned Diane and Kang Minho into the most unexpected duo in the company. They argued less now, well, mostly because Minho had learned to stop interrupting and start charming. One evening, as the office lights dimmed and the city glowed outside the glass walls, Minho leaned against Diane's desk. "Miss Diane," he began casually, "I think we deserve a break. Let's have dinner tonight. Strictly business, maybe." She didn't even look up. "No, thank you, Mr. Kang. Last time you said, strictly business. We ended up at a karaoke bar with you singing My Heart Will Go On." Minho gasped dramatically. "That was for team bonding." Diane chuckled, finally glancing at him. "It was off-key bonding." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Please, Diane. Just dinner. No songs. No drama. Just good food and maybe your laughter. It's good for the economy." She tried to resist, but his ridiculous seriousness made her laugh out loud. "Fine," she sighed. "But if you embarrass me again, I'm sending the bill to your company. Deal! He grinned, fist pumping like a teenager. Jiwoo, who was walking by, muttered under his breath, "Ah, he's hopeless." That night, as Diane got ready, she caught herself smiling in the mirror. Why was she suddenly nervous? It wasn't a date. It couldn't be. But when she arrived at the restaurant, a quiet rooftop garden glowing with lanterns and Seoul's skyline beneath, it didn't feel like business either. And the way Minho stood to pull out her chair, smiling softly, made her heart do that dangerous little skip again. The rooftop breeze carried the scent of jasmine and soft jazz from the restaurant speakers. For once, Kang Minho wasn't the commanding CEO everyone feared. He was just a man nervously stirring his wine glass while Diane sat across from him, looking effortlessly calm. "So," she said, breaking the silence, "what's the real reason behind this dinner, Mr. Kang? You don't look like someone who eats just to celebrate spreadsheets." He laughed awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. "You caught me." Then he sighed, his voice softer. "I wanted to say something I should have said a long time ago." Diane tilted her head, curious. "I used to get angry whenever you spoke back to me," he confessed, eyes fixed on the flickering candle between them. "I thought you were challenging my authority, making me look weak in front of everyone. But now I realize," he paused, meeting her gaze, "you were the only one brave enough to tell me the truth, the only one who wasn't afraid of me." Diane blinked, her confident smile fading into surprise. He went on, his tone honest, a little shaky. "I didn't fire you because you were wrong. I fired you because I couldn't handle how right you were. You made me think and I wasn't used to that. But since you left, everything's been too quiet." She tried to cover her emotion with humor. "So you're saying you miss arguing with me?" He chuckled softly. "Maybe. Or maybe I just miss you." The table fell quiet again. The Seoul skyline glittered behind them like 1,000 tiny stars, and for the first time Diane couldn't find a smart comeback. Her heart raced, betraying her calm expression. "You're impossible, Mr. Kang," she finally whispered. He smiled warmly. "Maybe. But at least I'm honest now." She looked away, smiling despite herself, because somewhere between his awkward honesty and the candlelight, something between them had quietly changed forever. The tension that once filled the rooftop melted into something softer, almost sweet. After Kang Minho's confession, Diane sat back in her chair, arms folded, pretending to look unimpressed. "So," she said with a teasing smirk, "you fired me because you couldn't handle my greatness?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "No, I fired you because you talk too much." She gasped dramatically. "Excuse me. I mean," he fumbled, trying to correct himself, "you talk sense but very loudly." Diane laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. "Wow, that's your apology? Remind me to fire you next time." Minho smiled, his shoulders relaxing for the first time all night. "You can't fire me. I'm the boss." "Not if I become your boss first," she shot back confidently. They both laughed, and in that laughter, all the old walls between them fell apart. It wasn't about work anymore. It wasn't about pride. It was just two people who had finally learned to meet halfway, and maybe, just maybe, liked what they found there. Later that night, Diane lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling of her cozy apartment. She tried to convince herself that it was just dinner, just closure. But every time she remembered the way he looked at her, that mix of awkward honesty and quiet admiration, she couldn't stop smiling. She tossed around in bed, laughing to herself. "Oh no, Diane, you're in trouble," she whispered, covering her face with a pillow. Outside, the city lights twinkled, but inside her heart, something new had begun to glow. The next morning, the office buzzed with its usual rhythm. Keyboards clicking, phones ringing, staff whispering about deadlines and gossip. But Diane walked in, calm as always, ready to face another busy day with her usual professionalism. When she stepped into the conference room, she didn't expect to see him there already. Kang Minho, standing near the window, reviewing files with a focused gaze that somehow softened when he noticed her walk in. "Good morning, Miss Diane," he said with that subtle smile that made her chest flutter for no reason. The meeting began, directors talking over each other, debating projections and strategies. But this time, Minho didn't interrupt her. He waited. And when she finally spoke, the room went silent. Her presentation was sharp, confident, and clear. When she finished, he leaned forward and said, That's exactly the kind of insight this company needs. Excellent work, Miss Diane. The room froze. His tone was proud, almost protective. Everyone stared, shocked. He never praised anyone publicly before. A faint smile touched Diane's lips, though she tried to hide it. Her heart fluttered. The once cold CEO was now her biggest supporter. As the meeting ended, she caught him watching her again, eyes soft. The same man who used to argue with her now couldn't stop admiring her. And for the first time, Diane felt seen. Everyone had witnessed the impossible. The ever-cold CEO, Minho, had praised someone. Publicly. Diane walked in gracefully, pretending not to notice the curious glances and half-hidden smiles. She adjusted her cream blazer and whispered to herself, "Relax, Diane. They'll get over it." But deep down, her heart fluttered every time she remembered his voice saying, "Excellent work, Miss Diane." Meanwhile, in his office, Minho sat at his desk, pretending to type while secretly scrolling through the African-Asia project files, the same presentation Diane had made. His assistant, Jiwoo, walked in with his usual cheeky grin. "Boss, can I ask something?" Jiwoo said, leaning on the doorframe. Minho didn't look up. "If it's about work, yes. If it's about Diane, no." Jiwoo chuckled. "Too late. The entire office is talking. You praised her, sir. You. The man who once scolded someone for sneezing too loud." Minho sighed, rubbing his temple. "She earned it. She's different." Jiwoo smirked. "Different? Or special?" Minho's eyes flicked up sharply, and Jiwoo raised his hands in surrender. Okay. Just saying you've smiled more in 1 week than in the last 3 years." Unknown to them, Diane had stopped just outside the half-open door, holding a file she'd come to deliver. Her lips curled into a small, shy smile as she heard Minho mutter, "Don't exaggerate. I'm just learning to appreciate people better." Jiwoo laughed. "Appreciate people or Diane? Get out," Minho said flatly, but the faint blush on his face betrayed him. Diane quietly turned around and walked away, biting her lip to hide her laughter. Her heart felt warm, lighter than it had in a long time. Maybe, just maybe, this cold CEO was finally melting. The more they worked together, the harder it became for Minho to stay professional. Every time Diane spoke during meetings, his eyes found her. Not because of her words, but because of her laughter, the way her hands moved when she explained an idea, the confidence that filled the room whenever she stood. It drove him crazy. One afternoon, they sat side by side in the conference lounge, reviewing the African-Asia project reports. The air was calm, soft music played faintly from the background, but inside Minho's chest, chaos. "Mr. Kong, what do you think about the partnership strategy?" Diane asked, glancing at him. Minho blinked, realizing he hadn't heard a single word she said. Yes. Perfect. Excellent idea." Diane squinted. "You didn't even look at the slide." He cleared his throat. "Of course I did. I just trust your instincts." Diane chuckled. "Since when? You used to argue with me over comma placements." Minho looked away quickly, trying to hide his smile. People evolve. But the real chaos began when Jiwoo entered with coffee and caught his boss staring dreamily at Diane. "Wow, boss," Jiwoo said loudly, grinning. "You're really evolving, huh?" Diane tried to suppress her laughter while Minho's face turned red. "Get out, Jiwoo," he muttered. But later that evening, after everyone left, Minho found himself lingering behind. Diane was still in the office, her hair falling slightly as she typed. The city lights reflected in her eyes, and he felt something shift inside him, something no logic could explain. He walked up quietly and placed a cup of coffee beside her. She looked up surprised. "You didn't have to." He smiled softly. "I wanted to." There was a long silence. Just their eyes. Just that heartbeat. And for the first time, the once cold CEO couldn't hide how he truly felt. The air between them grew still, soft, delicate, almost too heavy to breathe. Diane tried to look away, but his gaze held her there. Minho had never looked at anyone like that before. Not with such warmth, not with such gentleness. She cleared her throat, trying to break the silence. "You know, if you keep staring like that, people might think." He stepped closer, his voice calm but low. "Let them think." Her heart fluttered. The confident Diane who could handle any meeting, any argument, suddenly felt like she'd forgotten how to breathe. Mr. Kong, she whispered. Minho, he corrected softly. Just Minho. He leaned slightly forward, his eyes never leaving hers. Everything about him, his steady breath, his trembling hand, the faint scent of his cologne, made her pulse race. The world outside the glass window blurred into golden lights. The only thing real was him, standing inches away. For a brief second, he hesitated. Then his hand brushed against hers on the desk. Diane's fingers froze, her heart skipping wildly. Why are you doing this? She murmured. Because I can't stop thinking about you, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. He leaned in closer, until their lips were just a breath apart. And then, the office door swung open. Jiwoo's voice echoed, Boss, about tomorrow's. He froze. Oh wow. Sorry. I'll come back later. The door shut instantly. Diane jumped back, her face flushed, while Minho looked away, pretending to adjust his tie. The silence that followed was filled with awkwardness and electric tension. Finally Diane spoke, trying not to smile. You really need to lock that door next time. He looked at her, eyes soft but teasing. Next time. Her cheeks burned. Good night, Mr. Kong. She grabbed her bag quickly and walked out, but as she entered the elevator, her hand touched her chest, her heart still pounding uncontrollably. The next morning, Kong Minho stormed into his office like a man on a mission. The entire building could feel the tension. Even the coffee machine went silent. Jiwoo was already waiting at the desk, humming happily and typing an email, when Minho burst through the door. You! Minho barked, pointing dramatically. You're fired. Jiwoo froze mid-sentence. What? What did I do this time? Minho dropped his briefcase on the desk. What were you doing yesterday evening? Why did you barge into my office without knocking? Jiwoo blinked, confused. I came to ask about the schedule. The schedule could have waited. Minho snapped, pacing the room. You ruined. You interrupted an important conversation. Jiwoo's mouth curved into a grin. Oh, you mean the almost kiss conversation? Minho froze mid-step, glaring at him. Watch your mouth. Jiwoo laughed. Boss, the entire floor could feel the tension last night. You should be thanking me. I saved your reputation. Saved. Minho scoffed. You're lucky I didn't have security escort you out. Jiwoo leaned closer, teasing. But admit it, sir. You were this close to confessing your love. Minho turned away, loosening his tie. Don't be ridiculous. I'm not, he sighed, collapsing into his chair. It's complicated. Jiwoo smirked. Complicated feelings or complicated woman? Minho shot him a deadly glare. You're fired again. Third time this month, Jiwoo said cheerfully. See you after lunch, boss. Minho groaned, rubbing his forehead. Why do I even keep you? Jiwoo grinned. Because without me, who else will keep your love story interesting? At that, even Minho couldn't hide his smile. He leaned back, chuckling under his breath, and maybe just maybe realizing that Jiwoo wasn't entirely wrong. The office felt strangely quiet. Kong Minho kept glancing at the door, waiting for Diane's usual confident stride, but she never came. When Jiwoo handed him the morning files, he snapped, Where is she? Jiwoo adjusted his glasses awkwardly. She requested to work from home, sir. Minho froze, his jaw tightening. Work from home? He repeated, as if the words themselves offended him. The truth was simple, he missed her. The teasing, the witty comebacks, the little smiles that had started melting his cold exterior. He tried to focus on work, but every report felt empty without her voice beside him. By lunchtime, he was pacing his office like a restless lion. Jiwoo, seeing his boss's agitation, muttered under his breath, love has truly humbled the great Kong Minho. By evening, Minho couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed his coat, ignoring Jiwoo's confused expression. Cancel all my meetings, he said sharply. Jiwoo blinked. It's 7 p.m., sir. You have none. Then cancel tomorrow's too. Minho barked before storming out, leaving Jiwoo whispering to himself, Someone's in trouble, and it's not her. A few minutes later, Diane heard a knock on her apartment door. She frowned. Who could that be this late? Diane opened the door, still in her home clothes, and froze when she saw Minho standing there. rain droplets clinging to his black coat, his hair slightly damp. For a moment neither of them spoke. She crossed her arms, pretending to look annoyed even though her heart was racing. "What are you doing here, Mr. Kong?" she asked, keeping her tone firm. He lifted the takeout bags with a shy grin. "Apologizing. And possibly bribing you with your favorite kimchi stew." Diane rolled her eyes. "You came all the way here because of stew?" "No," he said softly, his voice dropping lower. "Because you didn't come to work." Her expression shifted. She tried to brush it off. "I told Jiwoo I needed space to focus on the report." "I know," he interrupted gently. "But it felt empty without you there." He looked down, then back up at her, his eyes sincere. "I didn't realize how much noise you brought into my quiet life, and how much I needed it." Diane blinked, caught off guard by his honesty. "Minho." He stepped closer, his tone vulnerable. "I'm sorry for all the times I made things hard for you. I acted cold because I didn't know how to deal with you. You talk back. You challenge me. You make me want to be better. And that scared me." Diane's lips parted, her heart softening as she whispered, "So now what?" Minho gave a small laugh. "Now, I hope you'll let me inside before the neighbors think I'm confessing to a crime." Diane chuckled and finally opened the door wider. "Fine. But only because of the stew." He grinned, stepping in, knowing it wasn't just the stew that made her say yes. Inside, the air was warm, filled with the aroma of food and awkward tension. Minho sat stiffly on the couch while Diane set the table. She tried to act uninterested, but her eyes kept darting toward him. When they finally sat down, he looked serious, too serious. "Diane, I didn't just come to apologize for being a jerk at work," he said quietly. "I came because I realized I don't like my office when you're not there. I don't like my coffee when you're not the one arguing about it." She froze, staring at him. "Minho." He leaned forward, his voice soft. "You drive me crazy, but in a way I can't live without. Every day you challenge me, and I used to hate it, but now it's the only thing that keeps me sane." For once, Diane didn't have a comeback. She just looked down, her heart racing. Then she whispered with a playful smile, "You're terrible at saying sorry." He laughed, the first genuine laugh of the night, and replied, "Then maybe I should keep practicing, starting with dinner." As they ate together, teasing and joking again, it felt like something had quietly shifted between them. The rain outside softened, but inside her little apartment, something else began to bloom: warmth, laughter, and something dangerously close to love. Dinner stretched longer than either of them planned. Between teasing and laughter, the air grew softer, heavier. The tension that had always existed between them, the fiery arguments, the teasing glances, the unspoken "what if," was now impossible to ignore. Diane leaned back, crossing her legs and watching him with that playful smirk that always got under his skin. "So, Mr. CEO, is this your strategy to win every disagreement? Bring food and charm your opponent?" Kong Minho grinned. "Only when my opponent happens to be the smartest person I've ever met, and the most stubborn." She chuckled. "Stubborn? You literally fired me for disagreeing with you." He winced. "Yeah, worst decision of my career. I've been suffering ever since." Her laughter faded, replaced by something quieter. Curiosity, emotion. "You mean that?" He nodded slowly, his eyes holding hers. Every word. The silence between them grew thick. The only sound was the rain outside and the faint ticking of the wall clock. Diane looked away for a second, and that was all it took. Minho's hand reached across the table, gently brushing her fingers. "Diane," he murmured. Her heart stuttered. "Minho, what are you?" Before she could finish, he leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't rushed or demanding. It was gentle, like a confession he'd been holding in for too long. Diane froze for a heartbeat, her breath caught in her chest. Then slowly she kissed him back. The taste of rain and spice lingered on his lips, and her fingers clutched his shirt without realizing. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless. Diane's voice came out in a whisper. "You really are impossible." He smiled, that small boyish smile that broke through his CEO armor. "Only for you." She shook her head, trying to hide her smile, but her cheeks betrayed her, glowing pink under the soft light. And for the first time there were no arguments, no titles, no pride, just two people who had finally stopped fighting what was always there. The next morning, KBC Holdings was buzzing, and not because of any major project. The staff had their eyes glued to one thing: the subtle smiles and stolen glances between CEO Kong Minho and Diane. When the elevator doors opened, Minho stepped out first, looking unusually cheerful for a Monday. His suit was perfectly pressed, his tie a little too bright, a rare sight for someone who usually preferred all black. Then came Diane, walking confidently behind him in a fitted cream blouse and beige trousers, her curls bouncing, her smile glowing like someone who had just discovered the world's best secret. Whispers began instantly. "Wait, is that Diane?" Smiling at the CEO. She actually smiled at him. And he smiled back. "Oh my God, are they?" Jiwoo, standing near the coffee station, almost choked on his espresso. He rushed over to Minho's office. "Sir, be honest with me. Did you too?" Minho lifted a brow, smirking. "Jiwoo, are you my assistant or my mother?" Jiwoo stuttered. "Well, technically, both when it comes to your emotional life." Minho groaned. "Just get me the Afro-Asia project files." Meanwhile, Diane walked into the office, ignoring the whispers. When one of the interns teased, "Miss Diane, you look different today," she grinned. "Confidence looks good on everyone, sweetheart." By noon, she and Minho were in a meeting together, and every time their eyes met, Diane didn't even bother hiding her amusement. He looked flustered, trying to maintain his CEO composure, but she had clearly won this round. At one point, Jiwoo caught them exchanging a look and muttered under his breath, "This is how office scandals are born." Minho overheard and shot him a glare. "You're fired again." Diane burst into laughter right there in the meeting, that laugh that always got under his skin, and this time Minho didn't even try to stop himself from smiling. The entire office pretended not to see, but deep down everyone knew. Something was definitely happening between the CEO and the woman who once dared to correct him. And for once, Diane didn't care what anyone thought. She just kept smiling, and Minho couldn't stop falling. The Africa-Asia business project had grown bigger than anyone imagined. What started as a simple collaboration had now become the biggest partnership in KM Holdings history. And everyone knew exactly who made it happen: Diane and Kong Minho. The boardroom was alive with excitement that morning. Journalists had already begun calling it the Global Bridge Project. Diane stood confidently by the digital screen, presenting the final statistics, her voice clear, her tone commanding. "As of this quarter," she said, pointing to the glowing chart, "the joint market expansion has exceeded expectations by 38%. This proves that inclusion and strategic collaboration between Africa and Asia isn't just possible. It's powerful." The board members erupted in applause. But as Diane turned to sit down, she caught Minho's eyes. He wasn't clapping for the numbers, he was clapping for her. After the meeting, the chairman stood. "Mr. Kong, Ms. Diane, you two will represent the company at the Global Business Forum in Bali next week. The investors want both of you present." The room buzzed instantly. A business trip. Together. Jiwoo nearly dropped his tablet. "Wait, together? As in same hotel? Same country? Same time zone? Sir, should I?" "Jiwoo," Minho said smoothly, "book the tickets. And no, you're not coming." Diane smirked. "Oh, come on, Jiwoo. I thought you loved babysitting your boss." Jiwoo groaned. "At this point, I might need therapy, not travel." Diane laughed, gathering her laptop. "Don't worry, I'll make sure your boss behaves." Minho grinned, adjusting his tie. "I doubt that's possible when you're around." The air between them lingered for a second, warm, teasing, and electric. As she walked out of the room, Minho watched her go, thinking about how far they'd come. From enemies to partners, from arguments to something he could no longer define. One thing was certain: Bali was about to change everything. The airplane touched down in Bali just as the sunset painted the sky orange and gold. Diane stepped out of the terminal in a white wrap dress that fluttered in the warm breeze. Behind her, Kong Minho walked in his cream linen shirt, holding both their passports and looking suspiciously annoyed. "Jiwoo," he muttered under his breath. "I swear, this man will see heaven early if he keeps this up." "What did he do this time?" Diane asked, adjusting her sunglasses. "You'll see soon enough," Minho sighed. When they arrived at the hotel, the receptionist greeted them with a wide smile. "Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Kong. Your honeymoon suite is ready. Diane froze. Wait, what? The receptionist handed over the room key. Everything's arranged by your assistant, Ji-woo. Such a thoughtful young man. Minho's jaw dropped. He what? Diane turned to him, crossing her arms. So we're married now? Should I start calling you honey? He groaned, rubbing his temple. This is the last time I let Ji-woo handle bookings. The last time. She tried to hold back laughter but failed miserably. Relax, Mr. Kong. It's just a room. How bad can it be? Then they entered the suite. Rose petals. Candles. A heart-shaped bed. Even the towels were folded into kissing swans. Diane nearly fell to the floor laughing. Oh my God, this is too much. Minho threw his hands up. I'm firing him. I mean it this time. Later that night, after the business forum, the laughter from earlier still lingered between them. They walked barefoot along the beach, the moonlight silvering the waves. You know, Diane said, glancing at him, if Ji-woo wanted us together, he's doing a pretty good job. He smirked. You think he planned this on purpose? She nodded teasingly. Maybe he's just tired of watching his boss pretend he's not in love. Minho stopped walking. Pretend. His voice softened. I'm done pretending. She looked up and before another word could leave her lips, he kissed her, deeply, hungrily, the ocean wind carrying their laughter and warmth into the night. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, Diane whispered, Remind me to thank Ji-woo later. Minho chuckled, brushing a curl from her cheek. No need. He's already fired after the honeymoon. The sound of ocean waves faded into applause. Months after that unforgettable honeymoon project in Bali, the world couldn't stop talking about the African-Asia Business Bridge, a groundbreaking success that placed Kong Corporation and Diane's consultancy firm on the global map. Every camera in the hall flashed as Minho stood at the podium, looking dapper in his dark suit. Diane, radiant in her fitted emerald dress, stood proudly beside him. He cleared his throat and smiled in that teasing way that always made her roll her eyes. They say never mix business with pleasure, he said, glancing at her with a grin, but I think sometimes, the best business decisions come with a little bit of love and a lot of arguing. The crowd laughed and Diane playfully nudged his arm. Cameras caught the moment, her smile soft, his gaze tender. After the ceremony, they walked out hand in hand. Ji-woo trailed behind, now their joint assistant, muttering under his breath. I still don't understand how I ended up working for both of them. Diane turned and laughed. Because you booked us as a couple, remember? Minho smirked and added, Best mistake you ever made. They all burst out laughing as they stepped into the limo. Through the tinted glass, the city lights shimmered. A reflection of two hearts that started with fire, pride, and endless debates but found something deeper. Respect, partnership, and love. Months later, they were seen together again. Not just as business partners, but as life partners. Their company expanded across continents, and every new project carried both their names side by side. At home, Minho often joked, I used to fire her for arguing. Now, I can't sleep unless she wins the argument. Diane would laugh, leaning into him as the city slept. Together they had built an empire, not just in business but in love. And so the fierce strategist and the stubborn CEO finally found balance. A love story wrapped in laughter, power, and endless possibilities. Thank you for watching, bestie. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you are new here, please tell us where you are watching from. We would love to know you. And if you love this story, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your kindness keeps us going. This is Afro Love Diaries, where every heartbeat tells a story.